Good evening, everybody. This is Brian Lusk here. Thank you for joining me and Robby Russell, who I've had a long conversation with about potential ways in which a deal could be cut to, in the end, bring the war in Ukraine to an end. So let's go ahead and jump right in here and hear what he has to say and have a good discussion. By the way, go ahead and jump into the comments and let me know what you think of this discussion, whether you'd like to see more like it in the future, and give me some additional information as to what you would like to see for content on the channel. In the meantime, let's go ahead and go forward with Robby Russell. Glad to always have him. He's great part of the channel, good friend of mine, and he wants to talk to me about what his thoughts are on a
Yeah,
possible Trump peace plan are.
very
Um,
air quoted.
because right now, as of this moment, there is no official released plan. There's a
Right.
lot of possibles, but nobody's actually given us the goods,
That's right.
for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah, it's all going to be speculation. I mean, people like you who have been following this so closely, and people like me who have done that, and also have a little more of the roots there. We're going to kind of know what is the wind telling us. What are our options that we see? And one of the things. I mean, obviously, people are divided on the election and whatnot. I think there was an overwhelming support for Trump. I think everyone has a question in their mind about, was that the best candidate for the Republican Party? I think most people say no, but we got what we got, right? So let's work with it. Your
Yeah.
tires low on air and it rolls. Okay, you know,
It's still round.
yeah, it's still, we're not in the Flintstones here. So, you know, I think for me, there's a couple things that stick out, and I'm not going to push the Trump, pro Trump. But I think that it's important to know why he is the president just a little bit. And you really touched well on this earlier. I thought a huge thing was that Melania picture. I don't think he's going to forget that. I think
No,
you can't forget that. And
no.
I mean, it's so one of the hugest things with him is he's kind of the ego stroking type of person. We've established that. I think everyone agrees. He agrees.
Yeah.
When Obama defamed him in that meeting a long time ago and kind of gave him a jab that he wouldn't ever be a president, and he came back and did,
Right.
that's the type of person Trump's going to be. I think if he feels defamed, he's coming out with everything he's got, slander, all of it. And, he wins the second time, he doesn't have to worry about an additional race. So he's probably going to just write the pen to whose ear he hears last, just like what you had said.
Right.
And hopefully it's going to be, a pro Ukrainian thing. And I think given when he met Putin for the first time on camera and grabs his hand and pulls him into him in that power play, I think that still stands and is only supported more by that photo. And then the weakness of Russia really throughout this whole thing, to include having to have North Korean troops help out. I think
Oh my
that
heavens,
was
yes.
terrible.
Well, and I think the point remains that Trump likes winners.
Yeah,
And the action of bringing North
exactly.
Korea into this is not the action of a winner. And then, of course, the jabs and the things like that, I think are going to backfire on Russia in that same regard. But looking at the electorate and what the electorate was saying, I think that the people of America were saying we need a fighter, someone who's going to fight for America. Now, whether Trump is that person or not depends on your viewpoint. But overall, you can never argue that he will definitely fight.
Right.
And so I think a lot of it is that desire for, American leadership in the world again. And I think
Yeah.
that could actually play to a benefit in the end for Ukraine. But
Right.
overall, what are your thoughts on what kind of a peace
Yeah.
plan might be coming out?
So that was a great intro. We know Trump's a businessman. That's what he's always been, and a TV personality, which is ironic because Zelensky and him will get along in that aspect.
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but he wants to play for the winning team. Like he is, you're fired, you're fired. That's his favorite thing to do in the
Exactly.
in the in the Apprentice show. So I think I think that the near death experience with bullet going through his ear and stuff, and divine intervention, whatever we want to call it. I do think that that brought some idea that he's mortal, right? And that
You're right.
there's divine intervention. So he seems a little more calculated than usual, but that's not much for him, I would say. So one of the things that I think he's going to do is, he talked about Bobby Kennedy, which I love, make America healthy again, and just that whole deal. But what he kept saying almost every single time he brings Bobby up is, hey, Bobby, you can do everything. Just don't touch the liquid gold under our feet. He just kept saying that every time. He doesn't want Bobby to be in a position that has anything to do with the environment, I think. I think
Right.
Trump doesn't care much about the environment. He doesn't believe in a lot of those things. He wants Bobby to make us healthy. So that means he wants to frack, he wants to drill, he wants to access our natural gas, which I
Right.
think is the main point here. We have so much natural gas that he wants to tap into, and I'm almost certain. I mean, this is the one thing I think I'm pretty certain on. He is going to get as much natural gas pumping as possible, going to cultivate that, make sure it's refined. I don't know that process very well. And he's going to sell it overseas to Europe. And we're going to wean Europe off of the Russian tit, if you will, of natural gas, because that's their largest, I think that's their largest way of income there. Maybe I'm wrong.
Absolutely. It's a gigantic gas station with nukes, as we like to say.
Yeah.
And gas and oil are their main drivers of income. They're having to sell it at losses at some points to China and India, who are their main buyers right now. And
Right.
overall, that's the situation they're in, is that they are having to use that resource
Hmm.
in the main ways, every way they can, to bring income into the country. So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I see where you're going with
Yeah.
this. You're basically driving the price of oil and natural gas
Yeah.
so low that
So,
Vladimir Putin cannot sustain his
yeah.
war machine based on those profits. Correct?
Correct, and we haven't used this. I mean, to my understanding, we haven't tapped into that aggressively in a long time. So we're not used to having this superfluous amount of it anyway. So who cares if we don't make a large profit on it to just undercut Russia? I mean, Reagan did this back. I mean, you love Reagan, and I love the history there. Star Wars, going to the moon, all these things that have pushed the USSR at the time to collapse. I mean, they just overspent chasing us.
Right.
And I think that's the idea again. It's just this classic, hey, we will undercut everything and we will outspend you. They've got the resources of people, they're the war machine, but they don't have the finances to continue this clearly, and definitely not if their main source of income is just whittling away. I mean, I think that's his biggest, hey, now you're going to sign whatever this treaty is, or peace deal.
Yeah, kind of forcing the issue by driving them into economic ruin, effectively, much in the same vein as the Cold War, when, like you said, the space race and things like that. Ironically, and I think this is the funny part here, is that if Russia had decided not to chase that glory in the same
Yeah.
way, Russia probably wouldn't have collapsed. And
Yeah.
that's the Russian weakness there. They
Hmm.
they have this constant desire for validation. They want to be seen as the
Yep.
big effective power in the world. And the
Hmm.
United States, of course, is sitting there going, that's really nice. I'm going to pat you on the head and send you on your way, which
Right.
ticks them off to no end. But
Hmm.
I mean, if that could be pulled off overall, that could result in a second collapse of Russia, and
Right.
outright, even if that's how it works out. What about other aspects of a potential deal? Now, a lot of people have
Yeah.
been talking about basically freezing the lines where they are right now. I know
Hmm.
Ukraine has said that's not acceptable for a
Yeah.
variety of reasons, and I can see why.
Hmm.
But then there's other parts of that I've been seeing that people proposing. Now, understand this is what other people are saying they think Trump is going to do.
Right.
So we don't know what Trump's going to do. The thought
No,
was that
we don't.
they could have European armies come in and enforce that
Hmm.
that neutral zone, the demilitarized zone.
Thank
And
you.
if they
Yeah.
do that, NATO's already in Ukraine.
Right.
If they have the Europeans come in
Right.
there and enforce that, it effectively puts Ukraine into NATO de facto, if not in name.
Right.
What's your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah, that's great. I want to just go back just real quick to who Putin is, right? I
Yeah,
think when he saw Gorbachev and how much he at the time esteemed him, and then saw the collapse of the USSR, he despised him. And so he's never going to purposely let that happen again. So
yeah.
I think that's why these are just, hey, we're getting right back to the same outcome. Are you going to choose differently? And I think he will. So I think Trump, being a businessman, scarred with the past of the USSR, I think Putin's going to negotiate strongly in our favor, whatever that may be.
Interesting perspective. I think there's a motivation there. The problem is that the problem I see for that right now is I don't think Vladimir Putin currently thinks he's losing.
Oh yeah,
If
yeah.
you know
We
what I'm
didn't think
saying.
about that. Yeah,
If Vladimir Putin currently, at least to my view here, sees the U.S. at its current state as pretty much ineffective, impotent, if you will,
sure.
in Ukraine, and um, if depending on the nature of the reports he's getting from his generals, it could determine whether he thinks I am winning very expensively or
Right.
I'm blowing a whole lot of my resources on
Right.
a fool's errand. And the
Hmm.
two will result in very different responses from him. Which way do you see him going?
Wow. Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, of course, he's getting so much disinformation from his own people just so that they don't get thrown out of a window kind of deal. So I get it. I I think I don't know where he's at. I don't know what he thinks, but I do think that that is a viable option that you said, that we've got troops on the ground. I don't know if Trump's going to put his own troops, or if they're going to be. I don't know what form of international government is going to be there on a military scale. Do I think that Ukraine is cool with losing everything that they fought for? No. I think
No.
the most likely option is everything that's kind of destroyed those territories will be given back, except maybe Crimea. I think Crimea is just such a wealth of travel, resources. I mean, it's a destination that he has, I think, his most lavish, whatever summer home there. So I don't see that that's going to, I think it should be on the table. I don't know that, I don't know that that's going to be viable as much as I want that. I mean, I was engaged there. That would be great to get that back and revisit, but I could see where everything is given back except maybe Crimea or some weird demilitarized zone, like you said. Um, and I think that the hardball that we talked about with Russia, and then, hey, Zelensky, we're not going to send you any more money. I think those are going to be the two. Here's what I got, these cards in my pocket, and you can play ball or not, but this is what you're up against.
It's a bridge too far, for lack of a better way to say it, for
Mhm.
Vladimir Putin. He does not wish to lose Crimea at all, which is why I think that Ukraine has kept the pressure onto Crimea so much over the last year, because if you look at the military operations they've done, not necessarily with troops on the ground, but with destroying air defenses, destroying
Yeah,
infrastructure, destroying other things, they're trying to make Crimea untenable for Russia at this point. And
right.
I think there is a strong possibility that if Trump plays his cards right, he can say, "Look, we will make Crimea not a problem for you. You can have a Crimea as long as you give up everything else,
Mhm.
and we'll make sure that happens and we'll enforce that." The question is going to be: Is that going to be enough for Vladimir Putin? Is he willing
Yeah,
to compromise at that point? It's a card that could be on the table,
right.
one that I don't like either, to be honest.
Sure.
Um, and that mathematics may change if all of a sudden is that going to be enough for Vladimir Putin to
Yeah.
say it's good enough, or has he paid too high of a price to
Oh,
take the
yeah.
territory that he has right now?
Yeah, I think it's like he's having to juggle. I do think he's getting real information. I think Putin somehow has a way to get Western information unfiltered. And I would hope he's willing to hear that, and also willing to hear what's really happening on the ground, at least the enemy's account for it, if you will. So I wouldn't say he's probably fully blind. I mean, this is a guy who peddles in misinformation his whole life. I mean, KGB, etc. So he understands the mind games, and you need to know your enemy. I don't know. Maybe he's just being lied to, and that's all he gets is this filtered news. But I think he's got to know that in some way it's not going according to plan. And that whole thing with Tucker Carlson, and did he really prepare to sign something? And that's why they didn't push Kiev at the time with all that, the armored division. I don't know. I don't know how much is real. He's really good at confusing things and making you kind of think that he's normal. I don't
Right.
think he's normal. I think he wants to recreate what was lost back when he was, in adolescence and beyond. So, you know, the funny thing here, I think we're in such a can he juggle his population getting more and more frustrated and not supporting the war? How long can he maintain this, keep everyone happy, but also not go bankrupt, but also not continue to lose all these men, but also to appear strong on the international front? It's a lot to juggle right now. And this war has just absolutely undone every idea that we thought that they were strong. I mean, we've talked about that previously.
Yeah, it's pretty much destroyed the myth of unstoppable Russia. And
Absolutely.
especially when you start running the numbers. I mean, Europe and America have a combined GDP of 20 times that of Russia. Europe alone has like 3, 4 times the population. The U.S. has at least twice the population of Russia. The only thing that Russia has is a huge amount of land, which makes it even harder for him because he has to spread his forces all over the place to in order to
Right.
actually maintain and hold on to that land. The thing is that in regards to a peace deal, let's go back to Trump for just a moment here. One of the possibilities they keep talking about is this idea that Donald Trump would say, if you won't sign this peace deal, I'm going to flood Ukraine with weapons. What are your
Right.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good example of, you know, I don't know that I don't think JD Vance's kind of stance, and of course Donald Trump's, son is obviously like, hey, you're not getting another penny, right? So, but could I see, a woman scorned kind of situation? Maybe. And what I think kind of to counter that is I think Trump is a businessman. I think that he knows how to stroke the egos of other leaders who kind of fall in the dictator category, Putin, right? I
Right.
mean, the guy shook hands with and crossed the DMZ in North Korea. I mean, that was insane. So I think he has a knack for making other leaders who want to feel important. And I feel like he's kind of, it's a mirror of himself. Everyone wants their ego stroked. They want to feel validated. Putin's been begging for this since he got denied supposedly NATO way back with Bill Clinton and whatever was going on there. So there's this history of wanting to fit in. What I think may happen, or possibly even more likely, is allow Russia to disengage from this with their save a face intact, which personally I don't think that's ever possible based on what they've done and how they've shown everyone. But in a way, it could be manipulated that they did, which is, hey, look, step back from this, step back from Ukraine. And instead of us flooding Europe, we'll hook you up with being the main supplier of Europe and increasing that. We'll make your country thrive, but you need to stay in your zone. You need to stay in your country and not try to continue to push. Oh, and as a nice little olive branch, we'll make a treaty where they can't sign NATO. They can't, Ukraine will not join NATO for the next 10 years or whatever they feel is appropriate. Because obviously that paperwork doesn't hold weight anyway because of the Budapest Memorandum, right? So
Right.
just these nice little things like, hey, take this. You just can't pass up the sweet deal. Hey, look, guys, this war allowed us to show that, we're in solidarity with other Russian speakers and that we're not going to stand for this Nazification or whatever these fake
Right.
words are here out. But instead, we've got to show the world that to protect Russia and our interests. And now look at us thriving. We've connected all with Donald Trump. We've connected to Europe, and now they're taking our gas, and we're really whatever. You get what I'm saying? We're just getting to a point where I feel like that business deal is the only deal, and I don't think we're going to shut Ukraine fully off. I can't see Trump was so worried about the Afghanistan pullout, and I don't think that he shouldn't be. I think the way we did it was extremely wrong. I know people who are Afghanistan refugees who are suffering because of that, right? But I don't think he keeps saying that's like the biggest spot in our country for like since we were created. So I don't think
Right.
he's going to do another pullout even without our troops to that magnitude and go into history as the the president of the United States who let the free world fall. I don't see that being the narrative that he's cool with. So, I mean, I would love to get your opinion on if that makes sense to you, if that we're moving into a more financial decision versus a casualty decision.
I know exactly where you're going with this, and I do see that from my perspective. Legacy is something that is big to Trump.
Big.
He wants to not just be seen as a winner, but to be celebrated as that winner. And the fall of the Western world under his watch would absolutely not convey that message. So the question is going to be then what is in Trump's mind as far as what he thinks his legacy out of this could be. Brokering peace in a way that actually lasts would absolutely, burnish his bona fides in that particular way. Um, and if he manages to make a lasting peace out of this, that would be amazing. The thing is that the lasting peace will last only if the right circumstances exist at the end of it.
Right.
Allowing Russia to take huge swaths of Ukraine would not be stable in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
And my my analysis of that, at least the way I see it, is that the push on Kyiv early in the war was very much a deliberate decapitation strike attempt. More specifically,
Right.
they believed they were going to be welcomed as liberators. They'd be able to pull up to the local gas station and fill up their
Right.
tanks and just drive on into Kyiv because people would have been like, yay, the Russians are here to save us.
Save us. Yeah. Not
Whereas,
quite.
whereas the Ukrainians had a vote in the matter and they were like, no, negative. So the maximalist objective, I think, in Vladimir Putin's mind is still a possibility. One
Uh-huh.
where the leadership in Ukraine is overthrown, replaced with a puppet government of some type that is pro-Russia, and therefore, the over time Ukraine is absorbed back into a new USSR. The problem is going to be is how do you take Putin and make him happy with something less than that?
Correct. Yeah.
And if Donald Trump can find a way to make that happen, I'll sing his praises all day long. I mean, honestly, I will think that is the most amazing thing ever. And my doubts about his abilities on this regard will have been totally, assuaged. The question is going to be how. I don't see it, but maybe Donald Trump, in his businessman's mind, is sitting there going, you know what? I know exactly how to talk to this guy. I know exactly with the right type of relationship. I've got that handshake that's going to pull him in there. It's going to put him in his place. Maybe he's got a plan or some combination of personal power, force of
Mm-hmm.
will, and political savvy that will result in Vladimir Putin saying, "Yes, this is the best deal
Right.
I could have gotten." And when it comes to business, the best deals are ones where everyone walks away happy that they've received the
Yes.
best deal they can get.
Yes.
The ones that
Right.
don't last are the ones where somebody's sitting there going, "You know what? I got screwed on this deal."
Right.
And the question is, where is that point where both sides,
Hmm.
where Putin and Zelensky, Ukraine and Russia, are both going to say, we got the best deal. We didn't get
Right.
screwed.
Right.
Uh, where is that point? Do you see that
Yeah.
point?
Yeah. I can't. I saw Zelensky, actually, you mentioned it, I believe, I want to say 6 months ago, where he said, I'm not willing to give up any territory. However, if the people of Ukraine vote in favor of that to end this war, I'm not going to go against the people. So, what that does is, to me, that's a big indicator. Okay, that's on the table. All right. He's now mentally made the switch that this wall is no longer there. And on the side, I sell motorcycles. That's just a thing I do, right? And if
Right.
I have a lot in one and I've added these exhausts and all these extra things, right? I've got a lot in this and I know what I need to get out of it. I need to find someone who appreciates this. However, so if someone just comes to me and says, I want to pay 8,000 for something that's worth 13, sorry, go kick rocks. And I feel that
Right.
that's the same. It's got to be something that makes it. But if you come to me and say, look, man, we're all in the same, I appreciate what you have. I like what you have. I can't pay this, but I can pay that. Maybe take this added item off of it, put this on there, saves you some money. You can resell that. We can both walk away happy. I'm gonna walk away. Hey man, I got a fair shake of this. They got what they wanted and they got at the price that they wanted. That is just what I feel like Trump has always done. So is he going to be able to do that with Putin? I don't know. But I do think he speaks his language. I think that behind closed doors that they speak to each other the same way. And that's sometimes hard to do. And if you have a commonality and just kind of are able to have a dialogue with someone, that's half the battle.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, can he talk to the European leaders and at least in his past 4 years?
Whew.
Well,
Yeah,
no,
there's another
it's
question.
this, do this, forget it, right? Pushing people out the way, literally. But I also don't think that he wants Europe to think of him as poorly as they currently do. So there's got to be all these weird strokes of an ego where the right deal comes out of it. Hopefully, there's enough advisors that aren't anti money to the world, but also are somewhat conservative and it's balanced. And I think truly Zelensky will probably agree to anything that makes some sense. I think he's ready to agree probably more than Putin is. But maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe, maybe. And we'll just have to see how that lines out in the end. Something to
Yeah.
keep in mind
Yeah.
is that I've been kind of watching the appointments going into Trump's cabinet. I've seen nuggets, like little nuggets of information that indicates that there could be more pro-Ukraine in there than
Hmm.
they like to let on. And so maybe that will come out in the end. Maybe that
Right.
will be the big win for Ukraine in this. But I can't guarantee that either because it's going to depend on what's going on in Donald Trump's mind.
Right. And we've
Um,
got Waltz, a prior special forces guy. I think that's humongous. We teach literally the Green Berets are the only group that I'm aware of the US military that go to other countries, build them up to fight in our interest. If that's not a mindset to help Ukraine, I don't know what could be.
well, yeah, and I think that's most likely the positive influence they might have. Now he's expressed some reservations in the past, mostly about oversight,
Hmm.
but he's got the right mindset overall.
Right.
And if that gets to Trump and Trump listens to him, we may
Right.
find that this is a positive thing. The biggest positive indicator I've seen so far is people that I do not trust to tell me the truth are really annoyed at what they call neocons in the Trump administration
Oh,
that he's
okay.
already adding
Yeah.
in.
Right.
And if it's making those people mad, that that most likely indicates positive news for everybody else. I mean,
Correct.
honestly, for one
Yeah.
thing, I don't trust their definition of neocon in a million years. But more
Right.
specifically, these are people that have been very much against Ukraine from the start,
Hmm.
and have said it was all. In fact, they've gone so far as to say it's all the United States' fault. It's all the United States' fault this happened.
Right.
And therefore, it's Vladimir Putin is fully justified in this. And I sit there and I go, how can you say that anyone is justified in taking this type of action,
Right.
slaughtering the hundreds of thousands of people on both sides, just so we're clear on that, um, in order to carry out some nebulous uh, security situation there. But I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems like we've got a situation where the strong arms are are failing. You know,
Yeah.
Russia as a strong man is failing, and the question is, do they
Yeah.
see it or not?
Yeah, and we know it can't be a morality thing at this point. I mean, if we're being honest with ourselves, yeah, one of my pastors said this one time. He said, "Look, if you're looking for a moral candidate in whatever race this is, you're not going to find that. So you're going to have to look for whatever other attributes, right?" And Putin
Right,
has no morality. He goes with the wind. He doesn't care what religion he's under or under him. He just wants power. And Trump is not a overly moral person himself. So it can't the moral things high grounds out, right? So
right,
we're left with power and negotiation. And I mean, another thing that I think would be wild, but it is just an option, right? The
right.
Budapest Memorandum, we touched on that. Don't know that this would ever happen. The likelihood, I think, is extremely low. However, it is still an option. Give Ukraine their nukes back, walk away.
I mean, honestly, yeah, it is an option. In fact, I just saw a news item that said that Ukraine could have a rudimentary nuclear weapon within months, but based on their own designs and their own supplies, within
Yeah.
months they could be turned right back into a nuclear state.
My goodness.
Now, obviously, that would be an early rudimentary version of it, not a
Right.
polished U.S. bomb or something like that.
Yeah. And also have the
But
delivery system.
yeah, well, they're already working on delivery systems. If you look at that, they've already started doing domestically produced ballistic missiles, and they
Oh,
certainly are able to produce effective ways to deliver a reasonably sized device. The problem is that rudimentary also typically means heavy, so
yeah,
it may not be deliverable with their current systems.
sure.
Or it could be that they could deliver something quite effective in a smaller package, making it more of a tactical than strategic nuclear weapon to
Yeah,
counter the tactical nuclear threat from Russia. I don't
yeah,
know. But either
and I'm look
way, we may be looking at
mhm,
a nuclear Ukraine regardless of
right.
what comes out of this.
Yeah, I'm looking at your background a little bit. You see the vast size of Russia, and then you've got Ukraine pocketed there, right below it to the left, if you're on my screen. And you've got Crimea right in there. I mean, we're really up against a giant here. I mean, there's just no. They've never had an issue with grinding men. I mean, in World War II, three guys, one rifle, figure it out, right? And that's just the coolest thing that's happened in our lifetime is technology. The amount of people that can get a cell phone footage of what's actually occurring, the devastation, these T90Ms getting obliterated, and sending that directly to some form of underground Russian populace. And that really is having an effect. There's no way Putin's not seeing this. And so,
Yeah.
you know, at what point can you not afford it? But you said this. I think I'm kind of there as far as my options and what I think is viable. But you said it best. We can come up with something now, but will it hold and how long will it hold? I mean, that is the question. If if you keep everyone fed, they're not going to be going out looking for more food. But how do you stop someone with the mindset of Putin from continuing and then establishing a lineage of that? I don't know how to
Right.
stop that without him being democratically ousted and then that just being this crazy Republican based or democracy based election that's true and fair. I don't see, I really don't see how long these impacts. It'll be the next country. It'll be Georgia. I mean, you already know what's happening in Georgia.
Oh yeah.
The next Moldova, this tiny country. Come, I mean, it just could continue.
And the question is just how far is he willing to go?
Yeah,
And yeah, well, in the end, I think that the right deal could end that. The other thing that could end that is the outright defeat of Russia in Ukraine. It
Yeah.
doesn't even require going into Russia to do it. Just kick Russia entirely out of Ukraine,
Yeah.
and make it so that this adventure had no benefit for him.
Right.
That would stop, basically put the full brakes on Vladimir Putin, probably for the rest
Hmm.
of his life. I mean, he's not
Yeah.
exactly a spring chicken. Um,
Yeah, I'm reminded of that
but
bully
yeah,
comment you made. Like the only way to really, stop a bully is to meet him and beat him. And that's, I think, the case here. I wish the American public understood how important it is that a small, tiny percentage of our Department of Defense funds going overseas. It sounds like a lot, right? But
yeah,
in the grand scheme of what our GDP is, it's minuscule. To go over there to help someone fight something that's kneecapping our adversary, clear adversary, and to
right.
not have to lose one of our guys in the process, I cannot think of a better deal. But all Americans see are the ones and the zeros and the dollar symbol in the front. And I just can't, I mean, I have friends I can't even get to that point. So America's getting tired. The piggybacking financially is coming to an end, just like my lights. And you would think they would have something a little better there. But yeah, it's just we're just kind of there. I think America's fed up with it. I would say that Europe's starting to kind of groan a little bit too. I don't know, but I don't think that we can continue to support Ukraine in the way we have, or even at all, for the foreseeable future. I just don't think the American will is behind it, and especially with this election, I think there's a lot of things that says take care of home base. That's just the message.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said for it. The I think Europe is going to have to stand up, because Europe's
Yeah.
going to be the most directly affected. And if they can't stand up, it means that they have lost their ability to defend their own nations.
Yes.
And much like we're seeing the cracks appear in our own readiness, through this war in Ukraine, the fact that of the matter is that it's clear that we are no longer as prepared as we were to wage a defensive or offensive war in the long run. And we need to rebuild that capability. And that's going to require going back and saying, look, yes, we need the top notch, bestest equipment ever, but we also
Yeah.
need to be able to produce huge numbers of cheap equipment that, if we have to
Yeah.
go against China or Russia, we are prepared to lose the cheap equipment,
Right.
because that's
Yeah.
that's going to be required. Otherwise, we will not be able to sustain a war effort over the times necessary to defeat
Right.
our adversaries if they bring the fight to us.
Yeah.
Um,
Drones and artillery. I mean, if we can't produce, I mean, we're relying currently, or they are, on like DJIs, right? I mean, obviously we know who makes that. So we
right,
need domestic products that are we've this has exposed a new level of technology in warfare that you would never, even in 2014 when they invaded. I mean, this was a sniper battle slash some artillery.
right,
Throw something in a chute, let it pop off, and run away. Now it's full scale, and everyone has a drone. Everyone's movement is watched. Thermal is cheap. We are in an age where the normal grunt on the ground or the big tank doesn't mean much. So we've learned a lot at the expense of a lot of lives, and
yes,
we didn't have to use any of our own. So that speaks for itself. So you're right. I think if we were running out of um, shells anyway, like we were literally running out. Now we know, oh, this is the scale we need to have them ready for if we have a war, and this how many per day. This is what we're using. So the logistics. I mean, we learned a lot from this truly, and
yeah.
that's only made us stronger.
And I think in the end, we as a nation need to rededicate ourselves to
Yeah,
being the strongest once again,
yeah,
because our enemies are absolutely willing to let us destroy ourselves if we will.
they're trying.
Um,
Yes,
and we need to be prepared for that. In the end, I do know that you are running low on time, and I do
yeah,
appreciate the conversation today, Robbie. I always appreciate your thoughts.
yeah.
In the
Thank
end, are you hopeful?
Well, Brian, I really appreciate you, and you stay steady. I know your schedule's been really aggressive, and these updates are so important. I mean, I don't know anyone who's doing it close to you. I'd love to get you on the big map. You deserve that for sure.
Thank you.
So, I really think that the first option that I suggested is probably the most viable. I think it will work. I think you gotta make the deal so sweet that people can't help but take a bite. And once you take a bite, you're hooked, right?
Right.
And we need save a face for Putin. That's imperative if he stays in power, and sustain that. And if that happens, great. Um, I want to even say that after this war, Zelensky being replaced by someone else, just so there's a new face, may help. There's just a lot of little things that may help. But I do think with Trump's administration advisors, there's going to be some pretty serious do this or this, do this
Right.
or this on both sides. And um, in the end, on a actual scale, we don't owe anyone anything. And he has that to lose, which is not much when all these other countries involved have everything to lose. So
Exactly.
I think everyone's yearning for something to move. Let's hope there's divine intervention here. Let's hope there's wisdom, fair deals. I don't think either side can walk away with the basket full of what they want. I think it's
Oh,
impossible.
absolutely. In the end, I encourage everyone to pray for the wisdom and capability of our leaders to bring this
Yeah.
to an equitable and just closure. And I want to say that there are bright spots, there are challenges, there are murky depths in the fog of war. In the end, the results will be that whatever our best is able to deliver. So let's pray for our best. Robby, again, thank you for the time tonight, and I hope
Thank
you have
you.
a great rest of your day. I know that you took some
I
time
will.
out of your day for this as well. So we
Well, I
will talk
appreciate
again
you.
in the near future.
I am honored. Thank you, Brian. You guys have a good night. See you on the next one.
Sounds perfect.